Have you ever felt exhausted even after a full night's sleep? Struggled to lose weight despite eating better? Or found yourself foggy-headed, achy, unmotivated, or just not quite yourself? While routine blood tests come back mostly normal, your body may have been sending signals all along. Signals that are easy to miss and hard to feel directly. Today we're diving into one of the most important ideas in modern health and longevity science, inflammation. Not the kind you see around a sprained ankle or a cut. I'm talking about a quieter, slower form. Low-grade chronic inflammation that can linger beneath the surface for years. Invisible, persistent, and surprisingly powerful. It may be a hidden force connecting fatigue, weight gain, poor recovery, brain fog, accelerated aging, and chronic disease. First, an important truth: inflammation is not the enemy. You wouldn't survive without it. It's one of the body's oldest survival mechanisms. Cut your finger and the immune system responds. Blood vessels change, immune cells arrive, repair starts. Acute inflammation heals and protects. The problem is when inflammation never fully turns off. Think of inflammation like fire. A controlled fire in a fireplace provides warmth. A fire that spreads through the house destroys. The same process that protects us short-term can harm us over years when it becomes chronic. Researchers now think millions may be living with this low-level inflammation without realizing it. Not enough to create obvious signs, but enough to affect energy, metabolism, recovery, and long-term health. Part of the challenge is that symptoms are often vague: fatigue, brain fog, poor concentration, joint stiffness, lack of motivation, slow recovery, disrupted sleep, weight gain. These can come from many causes, but inflammation often lurks in the background like static noise, subtly affecting multiple systems at once. Let's talk fatigue. It's one of the most common complaints. People usually blame lack of sleep and sometimes that's true, but inflammation can also cause tiredness even when sleep is adequate. Why? Because inflammation changes how the brain allocates energy. The immune system is metabolically expensive. When inflammatory activity increases, the body redirects resources toward defense and repair. Energy that would fuel focus, performance, and recovery gets reallocated. The result is genuine fatigue, not laziness, not weakness, but biology prioritizing survival over performance. This is the same reason people feel exhausted during infections. The body is encouraging rest and recovery. The issue is when a low-grade version of that state persists without an obvious infection. Now, weight gain. Most people think it's just calories in versus calories out. While energy balance matters, the biology is more complex. Inflammation affects hormones, appetite, insulin sensitivity, fat storage, metabolism, and recovery. Imagine metabolism as an orchestra. When everything runs smoothly, energy production, hormonal signals, blood sugar, and fat metabolism harmonize. Chronic inflammation adds noise, distorting signals and lowering efficiency. That can mean more fat storage and less metabolic flexibility. One strong link is with insulin. Chronic inflammation interferes with insulin signaling, making cells less responsive. The pancreas has to work harder, blood sugar control slips, and metabolic health declines, slowly and often silently. Visceral fat, the deep abdominal fat, is especially important because it's metabolically active and releases inflammatory molecules. More visceral fat increases inflammatory burden, which in turn promotes more fat storage. It's a self-reinforcing cycle unless something interrupts it. Inflammation doesn't only affect the body, it affects the brain. The immune and nervous systems constantly communicate. Inflammatory signals influence mood, motivation, concentration, memory, and emotional resilience. That likely explains why people with chronic inflammation often describe brain fog. The brain is reacting to biological signals even when those signals aren't obvious. Sleep and inflammation have a two-way relationship. Poor sleep raises inflammation. Inflammation disrupts sleep. One bad night can increase inflammatory markers temporarily. Repeated poor sleep amplifies the effect. Once inflammation rises, sleep quality often worsens further. A vicious cycle can develop, trapping the body between poor recovery and growing inflammatory activity. Consider how modern life stacks the deck in favor of low-grade inflammation. Sleep deprivation, sedentary behavior, highly processed foods, excess body fat, chronic stress, social isolation, smoking, too much alcohol, and environmental exposures. These factors usually act together. Inflammation is rarely caused by one thing. It's usually a pattern. That's why one of the most important ideas in preventive medicine is this. Inflammation is often a signal, not the root cause. It tells us something in the system needs attention, perhaps sleep, stress, nutrition, movement, or recovery. The goal isn't just to suppress inflammation, but to understand why it's there. Exercise illustrates this well. Intense exercise temporarily raises inflammation, yet regular exercise reduces chronic inflammation. How? Because acute stress and chronic stress are different. Exercise challenges the body, and recovery makes it stronger. Balance matters. Too little movement is harmful, but so is too much without recovery. Adaptation happens in the space between stress and rest. Nutrition matters too, not because a single food will cure inflammation, but because dietary patterns shape it over time. Diets rich in vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole foods, fiber, and healthy fats tend to support a healthier inflammatory environment. Diets heavy in ultra-processed foods tend to do the opposite. The body responds to patterns, not perfection. The gut microbiome also deserves attention. Trillions of microbes in the gut interact with the immune system. The quality of that relationship affects inflammation. Diet, sleep, stress, and exercise shape the microbiome, which in turn influences immune function. These connections are remarkable, and we're only beginning to understand them. Wearable technology can be useful here. Wearables don't directly measure inflammation yet, but they can track its consequences. Changes in sleep, heart rate variability, HRV, resting heart rate, and recovery. The body leaves clues, and increasingly, technology helps us spot patterns. Noticing declining HRV, rising resting heart rate, worsening sleep, and persistent fatigue doesn't diagnose inflammation, but it can reveal that the body is under strain, and that awareness creates an opportunity to intervene before bigger problems develop. At OXYZEN, that's how we think about health intelligence, not waiting for disease or obvious symptoms, but learning to recognize patterns, understand signals, and connect the dots. Health rarely changes overnight. It drifts quietly. The earlier we notice that drift, the easier it is to correct. If there's one lesson to take away, inflammation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent, a subtle signal behind fatigue, weight gain, poor recovery, brain fog, and declining resilience. Don't fear inflammation. Understand it. Often it's the messenger, and when we listen carefully, the message can change our health. I'm Dr. Yende. Thank you for joining me on OXYZEN Health Intelligence. Remember, your body is always communicating. Sometimes the quietest signals are the most important. And I'll see you in the next episode.